Hello everyone and welcome to the first video in this series where I'll be covering the films I go to see at the Fantasia Film Festival. What is Fantasia? Well, it's a film festival, you fucking idiot, but other than that, it's probably the biggest genre film festival in all of Canada and the best in North America, wink wink. So, this year I was fortunate enough to get a media pass so I can cover way more movies than in previous years. Last time I went there was 2019 and I only went one day, but this year I'm going more. I'm still not going every day because it's an hour 45 minutes away from my house and it's quite the long drive. Every movie I'll go see, I'll do a quick review on the channel. And Monday the 18th was my first day over there and I watched two movies. One I was really excited for, the documentary about the life and films of Jean Rollin, and the other one I went completely blind in, and that was The Roundup, a Korean action film. Let's start with the Jean Rollin documentaire. I'm pronouncing it like that because that's how they pronounced it in a documentary about the man. That's the problem when you have a British narrator talking about a French guy. The film is titled Orchestra of the Storm, the Fantastic Films of Jean Rollin, or something like that. The title's way too long, guys. It'll be written somewhere, but goddamn. The documentary is produced by Arrow Video, and it's directed by Dima Balin and Kat Ellinger. And I really love the fact that there is now a documentary to introduce the work of Jean Rollin out there. I did do a video about Rollin, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, where I went over 3 important films in his filmography, and this documentary does what I tried to do with my video, but in much more details. My goal whenever I create content about Jess Franco, Jean Rollin, is to promote these filmmakers out there because they lack the respect they deserve, and Rollin even more so than Jess Franco. And it was nice to hear the people that surrounded him his entire life talk about his life, his films, his ideologies, his poems, his writings. The man did a lot of things. And even as someone, I wouldn't consider myself a hardcore Rollin fan. I haven't seen all of his films, I really want to, and he hasn't produced as many as someone like Jess Franco, so watching all of his movies is quite the achievable goal. But I really don't know how to review a documentary, other than the technical aspect, which, unlike a lot of documentaries produced by Severin Film, was actually way more competently done. Other than 3 interviews that kinda sounded like dog shit, it was well made overall. It looked nice, even though some of the interviews didn't sound as good as others. Overall it looked nice throughout the entire film. But you could see the difference, between the French crew, the British crew, and the American and Canadian crew, I guess. But overall, the technical aspect was quite good. The archives that they found were very impressive. I mean, let's not forget that Rollin is from 1938, and we get a lot of pictures of him, his mother, his family, his mother's friend. And I learned through the documentary that Rollin was always really well connected to the French film industry. He was just a different breed. He was a true independent. Because in France, even though the new wave French movement was quite popular and respected all over the world, I mean, those were still the mainstream films at that time. And Rollin didn't want to make these types of films, even though some elements are similar. So this is what I really learned. I really learned about Rollin's relationship with other filmmakers, critics, and people from France. It's no secret that he is not very popular in France. He was destroyed by critics and audiences, which is not surprising coming from French people. Other than that, the interviews were interesting. We've got one of his best friends who worked on his films with him quite a lot. We had Brigitte Lahaye, who I have to say was probably the most honest one out of the entire cast of characters in this documentary, because she didn't mind, being truthful that, sometimes making films is hard, especially when you're coming from the adult industry back to the, regular film industry. She talks about that transition and how it was difficult to adapt and how Jean Rollin didn't really really realize that, but eventually they built a very good relationship, clearly demonstrated by the fact that Brigitte Lahaye is in like most of his later films, most of his past 1976 films. And other than that, you can always count on these documentaries having Pierre Lajeunesse, who's also at the festival this year, so plug that in too if you want to hear her talk. She's obviously an author, director of the folk horror documentary, and now Severin is putting out House of Psychotic Women, a box set based on her book about exploitation films. So a good cast. Another man who wrote Fascination, a Jean Rollin book. So the cast was really good. It was really interesting. The pacing was good right until the end. They decided to let basically the entirety of the interview of Rollin's best friend when she tells the story of how she died. And I know this sounds disrespectful, but a lot of details could have been cut because we all knew where the story was going to where the story was going to end. I mean, we all know Jean Rollin died, so the story was really too long. They went over his films that he did basically to help out just Franco. And as a Franco fan and a Rollin fan, I would have loved to hear more about those films, but they kind of skipped some of his films. But I mean, they did concentrate on his more important personal films, you know, films that you could really see him through those films. So yeah, it was a great movie, a great documentary. I can't wait to watch it again, own it on physical media. Probably Arrow, since they produce it, is gonna come out with a Blu-ray. I have no worries about this one. A lot of films, you know, at festivals, you see them once and then they don't get picked up for distribution and you never see them again. This one I'm pretty sure we'll see again. Produced by a distributor, makes sense.
네가 강혜상이냐?
The other film was The Roundup, directed by Se-young Lee, and it's a Korean action film, and apparently it's a sequel to another film that played at Fantasia in 2018. I was not familiar with this film. I only saw that it was a Korean action film, and I wanted to watch a movie, another movie other than the documentary, because seeing one movie wouldn't really make sense, because, you know, I'm coming from very far, I drive as long, so I wanted to see something else, and I really like Korean movies. I don't talk a lot about them on my channel just because I'm unfamiliar with the more underground extreme Korean films, but let's just say that one of my favorite film of all time is I Saw the Devil, The Villainous, all of these, and if you like action films, you can't go wrong with Asian cinema, especially Korean. A lot of American directors copy or get inspired or pay homage to a lot of the modern Korean action films, and I can see this one inspiring a lot of new Hollywood directors because it's quite amazing. The story is very simple. It's your average cop film movie. You know, you have the badass cop that doesn't take shit from anyone. You have his captain who knows like he's a good cop, but you know, due to his job, he has to kind of try to control him, not let him go too crazy. So the plot is very typical, but it deals with a subject I wasn't familiar with, and that was the Korean criminals are going to going to Southeast Asia to continue their crime and to dodge being, you know, imprisoned in Korea. I didn't know about that, and the film is in 2007, 2008 that it happens, so it's a period piece, which is weird to say when you're talking about the 2008s or 2007s, but it's a period piece. A rich kid goes to Vietnam, gets kidnapped, gets killed. The kidnappers ask for a ransom. The father doesn't want to pay it. He sends mercs over there. Meanwhile, the good cop goes to Vietnam because a criminal went to the embassy of Korea and basically surrounded himself. And, you know, the police find that very strange. In Vietnam, they cause a little chaos, but finally the criminal that, you know, was in Vietnam decided to go to Korea to basically kill or kidnapped the father of the kid he murdered. So like many Korean films, it's about revenge, family, and a lot of ass kicking. And holy shit is there a lot of ass kicking. There is also a very good comedic aspect. It's quite a funny film. The dialogue is very funny. Some physical comedy. The sound design is probably this film's highlight. When they punched each other or cut each other, you really felt that down your core, and it was very, very, very crunchy. The sound design was amazing. Music was your standard action fare. And other than that, the big man, I was unfamiliar with the actor, but he seems like a very charismatic guy and a man I would like to see in many other movies. I'll definitely have to check the first one, which I think is called The Outlaw. I mean, for a blind watch, the roundup was quite amazing, and I would honestly see it again, so let's pray to the distribution god that it gets a sort of distribution outside of Korea so we can get subtitles in there. Anyway, that was my first video about my first day in Fantasia Film Festival. Don't be surprised to see more of these in the future, and we'll see each other next time.
Fuck.